Alrighty, guys, welcome to Optimizing Forward, guys. I still obviously haven't rebranded this channel. The camera quality may not be the best today, unfortunately, but that doesn't really matter for the sake of this live stream. Today, what we're going to do is discuss two fairly interesting ideas. I think they're interesting. I think that they're very valuable, and maybe we can learn something in the process of figuring this out, learning things, growing. And for some reason this is not sharing, and I have no idea why. Super weird. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's not working. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to see if I can get this to work. Give me 1 second. See, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this to share correctly, but it's not sharing properly. That's really annoying. Okay. That is not what I want. All right, guys, so the first thing we're going to discuss is productive discourse versus non-productive. Okay. That's kind of what we're going to go over here. So one of the things that we want to concern ourselves with is efficiency, right? How can we as people be efficient? And one of the problems that I have found in 28 years of being on this earth is trying to figure out how can we communicate effectively, concisely, and maybe even elegantly, if you will. Elegantly. In other words, I want to communicate in a way in which my words accurately describes what I feel. Accurate. I want to accurately express myself. Okay. Accurately express with minimal interpretation. Okay. And that's something I'm adding here. Minimal with minimal interpretation. Okay. So this is something I think is quite fascinating, right? Because there's a lot of things that go on in what I call one-on-one interaction with another person, right? And this seems to me that my 28 years on this earth, most of problems come from other people. Other people cause problems. So we can definitely say that humans are the root of all problems, are the root of all problems. Okay. And that is simply because we have interests, right? We have different interests, different goals, different desires, different activities. Goals, desires, and wants. Okay, you can make those the same, wants. Now, what's going to tend to occur is that um, there are going to be these disagreements, right? And this is where the problem lies. What are we trying to figure out? What are we trying to communicate and why? Okay. And this, I think, is actually very beneficial to the optimized life, right? This is somewhat interesting to explore. Optimized life means a good life. A good life, probably, more than likely, the two will be collinear. They will align like a perpendicular line, right? There is a connection between these 2 points. Now, the thing is, why do we even care about this at all? Why do we care? And I think the reason why we care is because if we can communicate well, then we can minimize distractions, things that are of little interest to us, and focus on the things that really matter. So, one of the things I have identified is that most arguments are mostly a waste of time. Arguments, non-productive. A lot of arguments are largely a waste of time. Okay. And I think what this comes down to, because a lot of people will say, well, this shuts down discourse, this shuts down argumentation, this shuts down dissemination of ideas. And then the question is that really the case? And I would say the answer is no, right? I don't think a lack of argumentation prevents us from communicating ideas, but rather it creates what's called cognitive dissonance. Okay. And the thing is about cognitive dissonance, it's the notion that when a conflict arises, we're unable to find common ground. And the problem with all arguments is they fall on the basis of right and wrong. Okay. The thing you need to remember is that in almost anything, no matter how linguistically sound you are, no matter how elegant you are, no matter how graceful you are, no matter how well versed you are, knowledgeable you are, there is something that you're going to be wrong about. Okay. This is it's inevitable to not be wrong. You will be wrong eventually. Okay. Even if you were a supercomputer, you're still going to be wrong. Okay. Anybody can take anything and disprove you to some degree or another. Nobody can truly say we're always right about everything, because it's a very difficult thing to communicate, right? So well, what we are finding is that when we have peer-to-peer communication, and I'm gonna call this in this case P2P communication, P2P communication, what we're finding is that when this back and forth is occurring, one side will win and the other side will lose in their mind. So in this sense, it's kind of like a zero sum. Arguments tend to come from a zero sum place of winners and losers. But the thing is, when you win and the other person loses, no one is particularly gaining from these arguments. Okay, I have dealt with all sorts of people who argue about the dumbest things that they think that matter. They're trying to convince you. They think that they're going to change your mind, whatever the hell it is they're going to do. And then the question is that productive? And the answer more often than not is no, it's not the case. Not the case, right? At the end of the day, people will believe what they will believe. We cannot stop people from believing what they will believe. And in this sense, arguing, I believe, is a fundamental waste of time. Okay. And now there's this problem that tends to occur, right? Because people believe, well, if you're always in a state of agreement, then you're not growing. But this is simply not the case. In agreement, um, a state of agreement occurs precisely because we have a consensus of values that we follow. Consensus of values. And these consensus of values allows for many positive things in life. But the problem is we're all so focused on arguing about dumb things, trying to change someone else's mind, that we waste our time and we trying to convince somebody about someone else's life, and that prevents cooperation. I want cooperation. I want agreement. 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 And then maybe 3, I want dissemination of accurate information. Okay. A dissemination of accurate information is emotionally free information. Okay. Emotionally free. This means it is information that is articulated with minimal emotional bias. Emotionally free information. Okay. Emotionally free. All humans are emotional, but our emotions can miscommunicate inaccurately our intentions. So the question is argumentation ever productive? And I will say that the vast majority of arguments, you stand almost nothing to gain. Nothing to gain. Because the thing is, I'm not getting paid to convince you of something. Nobody's paying me. I'm not living your life. I have no way to verify if you will ever implement the things I have tried to convince you of. It is unknown to me what you know. That's another problem with argumentation, is that we have no idea, does that person intend to ever implement what I'm trying to convince them of? Do they really agree, or are they fake agreeing? And there's no accuracy as to who is right and who's wrong. So in most cases, I'm going to recommend you simply, after like maybe 2 to 3 responses back and forth, to simply cease the interaction. Simply say, well, we clearly don't agree on this. Let's move on. Okay, and then if they say, well, I would like to continue this further, ask them a simple question. What is it you're trying to accomplish? And do you need a point of clarification? Do you need some piece of information that you lack, or is it something you're actionably going to do? And if it's none of these 3 things, simply tell them you are not interested in, like, we're simply not interested. Not interested. Not interested in further communication. So what we're trying to do is to define a clear boundary of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. Because the thing is, if we entertain a non-productive discourse, it could become non-productive, conflictionary, destructive, and non-cooperative. These are all negatives, okay, with few positives. So I think in an optimized life, we want to have as many interactions that are positive interactions. We want to build relationships, interactions. We should strive, even if those people don't like us, to find common ground. Find common ground. What do we agree on? Common ground is very important in relationships, friendships. What do we actually agree upon? What is it? What do we agree on? Because it's very easy to find things we disagree on, but what do we agree on? And this creates an agreement that leads to future rewards. So if you're one of these people that loves to argue, I am just simply going to avoid you. I'm not going to really waste my time convincing you. I don't really care if you think you're right. I don't care if you are want to prove me wrong or whatever it is you want to do. I'm not interested because you're wasting a whole lot of my time. You're interested in a zero sum interaction. You are obviously more concerned about being right than you are about finding truth, and you're not interested in coming to a consensus. Because even if we fundamentally disagree, there's no reason why we can't come to an amicable consensus. Consensus is the most effective way to promote future cooperation. Okay. And notice why I keep saying is I'm looking for future cooperation. I'm looking for compliance. Compliance cooperation. That's what I'm looking for. I want someone who's going to comply or work with me, not work with me. Are you going to choose to try to work against me? Because you're going to be like, well, I proved you wrong. I did this. I did that. Yeah, I mean, but now you're telling me, you're informing me that you probably are going to do this behavior in the future. You might challenge me on more silly things that I would say don't particularly matter. Like, it's very, devil's advocate position will say, well, I can challenge you on these things. I can challenge your biases, your echo chamber, your perspective. I can attempt to re-clarify what it is that I don't understand to where you can become a better person. But then the question is, does that have to be an argument? So then we lead to what is a productive discourse. Argument versus discourse. They're two very different things. And there are what I would call productive arguments, but those are very rare versus discourse. In a discourse, we aren't really interested in worrying about who is right and wrong per se. Rather, we share a pot of information. We're going to get a pot of information. We're going to two parties. It's going to be a peer-to-peer interaction. It's going to go from one point to another, peer-to-peer. We're going to put information into the pot. It's going to fill up over time, and we're going to share things. One second. Kobo, could you give me like 5 minutes? I'm trying to make some right now. Then you can come back. I just need to finish this. I'm trying to work on something. I just need some privacy. So now what I'm looking for, give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to, give me 1 month. Okay, so I am trying to find a point-to-point consensus, a point-to-point consensus of potted information. Okay, we're trying to find a pot of information that we're trying to work on. Okay, it's point to point, person to person. And in the discourse, there are some things we will be right about, right, and wrong. And we're not super worried about that. If I'm right here and he's right here, I exchange this information and we both increase the knowledge pool. The knowledge pool increases over time. Okay, so I want you to think about this, because if we have a point-to-point pure communication system that's occurring, and it's point-to-point, but we're having points of contention, points of clarification, then what we should realize is that the discourse is fundamentally productive. And also, if we examine this, this is not zero sum, because I'm not worried about winning you in the argument. Not zero sum. And that's the thing that I'm going to look for. It's not point-to-point zero-sum communications. Not point-to-point, or I mean, it is point-to-point, but we're not worried about who's winning, who's losing, who's communicating, who's trying to convince the other. We're simply presenting the data of what is available, and then we're just simply trying to figure out what's the most accurate and probable answer. Okay, and if I'm wrong about something, then the data says I'm simply wrong, and we try to reconvene to a new consensus. Okay, so more often than not, discourses tend to be more consensus based, more amicable, more communicative, less zero sum, whereas non-productive arguments seek to win through an argument or a thesis statement or something to prove another person wrong, simply to prove them wrong, rather than actually having something of measurable value to change. Okay. And that is the fundamental difference between a productive discourse versus a non-productive debate. Okay. The question is there ever a point at which we should debate? It's an interesting question. Do we debate or not? Is there a point? Is there a point of merit and contention that I need to debate with somebody? Okay. Now, there are almost very few times in our personal lives where it ever really makes sense to debate with somebody. The only time it really makes sense to debate somebody is if they are spreading lies. If someone's lying, a liar, we should debate it. Debate to debunk. I'm here to debunk whatever is being propagated. I'm here to debunk what you have misinformed others about, not because I particularly care what you believe, but I care what others believe. Okay. I'm going to debate in debate club. That's a productive area. We're trying to refine our rhetorical skills. Debates in debate club, in mock trial, in a high school club, whatever it is, you're trying to present your case. This is productive. I'm learning how to express a complex, nuanced idea and trying to convince an audience of it. This is productive. It has a goal, a start and end goal. Start and end goal. Okay, so now we're beginning to see that there is some merit to debate only if the circumstance is defined and measured. Debate defined and measured. And if it does not meet these defined criteria, we simply disengage, we shut down, and we eliminate. Okay. Now I'm going to simulate what this might look like in terms that you guys may understand. If you have a coworker at work that's saying something that's non-productive or continues pushing something, you can simply say, I'm not interested in discussing this any further with you. And you will say nothing after that because there's no point in communicating any further. Give me 1 second, guys. And okay, sorry guys. Okay, so that is the thing we're attempting to figure out. Okay, so that's one verbal thing that we can do to deduce what must be done. Okay, I'm going to disengage from the conversation. I'm not going to participate any further, and then I will disengage and verbally say I would either like to change the subject. I'm not interested in continuing the subject, and if they continue, you simply walk away. Okay, and the final thing is shut down before it escalates. Shut down before escalation. Okay. Critical, we understand this because if I shut down before escalation, this thing can never get out of control. Guys, there are so many people who argue over the dumbest stuff, that do violence, that do things that are questionable, that harm other people, that lead to people getting in trouble, all this dumb shit that doesn't need to happen if you just simply shut it down. And the final thing is to filter. Okay, this is personally what I do, a little extreme, but it's efficient. Okay, if I filter argumentative people, I don't ever really deal with them because I already know they're going to say something retarded, something dumb. Doesn't really help my cause, doesn't help me. Okay, and by me filtering these people, I don't even have to waste my time just talking to them because they believe that arguments are productive. And if I don't think it's productive, I'm just going to simply want to eliminate them. Okay. It doesn't really matter how good of a person they are. I'm not interested if you believe these types of things because I have other things I'd rather do with my time. Okay. And the ironic part about this time, those things that you might have argued about, they'll figure it out on their own anyways. Figure out on own anyways. This is the ironic part of most things, is that they're going to figure out the very thing that you just communicated. They're going to figure out the very thing that you know you're right about or you're fairly confident about. But instead of wasting your time and my time, go figure it out for yourself. And I'm going to go do my thing, whatever that is. Okay. I'm telling you guys right now, if you simply just do that, you're going to make your communications superior. Okay. 95% of the time, if I'm having a discourse, a communication, a philosophical debate, far better than an argument. A debate is a constructive argument with a thesis statement. A debate, an informal debate, is basically some random dummy who may often think they're right about something, who's inarticulate or who's trying to prove a point for no particular reason and goal, and just simply don't participate. Okay. It's almost like, I'll give you guys one more analogy. Think of like a club, right, guys? I haven't clubbed in many years and I will never club again because I have often found it to not be very useful. Not useful because there's no goal in mind. What's the goal? Give me a goal. If I have a goal, I know what I'm working on. No goal, not sure what I'm working on. What's the goal? Okay, what's the goal? What's the goal? Tell me what my goal is. What's the thing I need to do? How do I get there? At a club, right? You're going to drink, you're going to do whatever. Not clear what I'm trying to. I'm trying to have fun, but I can go there or I can go somewhere else and have defined parameter of fun on my own time and on my own terms without worrying about random dumb stuff. And yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it. I think this is very straightforward. I mean, obviously, this video is not the best, but I hope this is still somewhat of value to you. And I do think this is immensely valuable. Communicating versus arguing. Okay. Again, to denote the difference between two arguments have to do with zero sum, who's right, who's wrong. My point's better, your point's worse. Convincing someone of something that they may or may not apply, may or may not do, may or may not change. Emotionally strong, high level cognitive dissonance versus a discussion about something that is amicable, cooperative, exchanges of ideas into an information pool. Both parties are accepting of points that are right or wrong, and there's future sustainability of consensus in the future because they're also communicating again at another point in time. The perspectives are far different. Okay, if I was to say what you would do in the optimized life, I would say that 98% of the time have productive and maybe like 2% of the time have productive debates, and like maybe 0.1% of the time is argumentation. Okay, there may be a small set of use cases where I truly need to have a zero-sum discussion with somebody and prove them wrong for some egotistical purpose. But like otherwise, it's just, I personally think it's fairly moronic. Okay, and the last thing is a process of elimination. Eliminate. Just eliminate people that argue without a defined goal or purpose. Don't interact with them. Cut communication. Cut it off. Simply unnecessary. Nothing to do. Nothing to gain. Move on. Move forward. Okay. And by us doing that, we can have elegant communication with consensus, cooperation, cognitive agreement, common ground, amicability. And I don't think a reasonable person would say that these are non-productive ends. I think most reasonable people will agree that these are things I desire in another person. Would you rather have an argumentative spouse or a reasonable spouse who can work out disagreements in a civil way? I think we know the answer to this. That's all I have for you guys for Optimize Forward. Also, guys, I'm currently offering coaching right now. Offering coaching for self-improvement. If you guys have any questions, you want any guidance, whatever you need. For right now, you guys can just simply message drewedu19@gmail.com for the time being. I need to make a new email because I still haven't rebranded this channel yet. And I'll charge a fixed rate if anyone is interested. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Have a good day.